Dear learners, I am Christina Georgy, your academic counselor for the MEG program. Today we will deal with the course code MEG-05, which is titled Literary Criticism and Theory. So as per the request of our learners, I will be recording this session for your effective preparation of the upcoming TEE. Today we will deal with block 6 of MEG-05. So let's move on to unit 3, where we will have a look at Virginia Woolf and her seminal work titled A Room of One's Own. So let me give you an introduction regarding this particular feminist, that is Virginia Woolf. She is an English writer. She is the pioneer in the use of a particular technique that is very commonly used in modernist novels. Do you have any idea what the specific technique is? Virginia Woolf, exactly, stream of consciousness. Thank you for that answer and I appreciate it. So Virginia Woolf is the pioneer of the stream of consciousness technique, and her husband is Leonard Woolf. He is also a political thinker and author. Yes, our text introduces her as a novelist and theorist based in London at a time of historic change. Politically, Britain's empire declined between the two world wars, it's mentioned here. Women got the right to vote and became more socially mobile as they entered the universities and the professions. So, the other notable works of Virginia Woolf include To the Lighthouse, written in 1927, The Waves, written in 1931, etc. It is always better to have an understanding regarding a few other works by these writers, so as to help you frame a biographical sketch. As I've always mentioned, you can make use of such relevant details to frame an introductory paragraph. These works, To the Lighthouse, The Waves, etc., exemplify her use of the stream of consciousness technique. That is a hallmark of modernism that describes external reality only when it bears on the interior psychological monologue of the protagonist. So along with her husband Leonard, Virginia Woolf began the Hogarth Press, an experimental venture in publishing, in the year 1917. So if you are aspirants of NET/SET or other competitive examinations, this is one thing that you will have to remember. The essay, now known as A Room of One's Own, began as a 2-part lecture series. Actually, Woolf was invited to deliver at 2 colleges in Cambridge, that is Newham and Girton, which at that time were both single-sex colleges that admitted only women. So in short, this was actually a speech offered by Virginia Woolf at a few women's colleges. Yes. So the key concepts include the following, that is, a woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. In other words, economic independence and domestic space are, according to Woolf, the prerequisites for women to write. That is, in short, if a woman wants to be a writer, she needs to have economic independence, and not just that, but also a domestic space, that is a room of her own. So that is what is mentioned here. For that matter, she has constructed an imaginary picture of a sister of a popular writer. Do you know who that writer is? Any idea? If you look at section 3.3.2 of your course book, you can see that name. She has constructed an imaginary picture of Shakespeare's sister, as talented as the dramatist, having to kill herself because gender bias in Elizabethan England prevented her from exploiting her talent and instead exploited her vulnerability as a woman. What she is trying to say is that because of the socio-political situations and the patriarchy that existed during that era, even if such a sister exists, she won't be able to be a writer and she'll just remain as any other woman. Okay, so no woman could have written the plays of Shakespeare, since these are the product of a masculine mind which is superior. She says that no women contemporary of Shakespeare could have written like him. The Elizabethan age was patriarchal enough to restrict women entirely to domestic sphere. It's not because Shakespeare is too talented not to have any opposition as a writer from any other woman. The reason is that all the women of those times were restricted. Yes, I'm talking about the fictional character, the fictional sister of Shakespeare, constructed by Woolf to explain this context. That is, even if Shakespeare had a sister, she wouldn't have been able to be a better writer than Shakespeare, but because the socio-political restrictions of the times would never allow her to be independent. Alright, that's all. Now, the text also suggests mentions regarding those women that are suggested by Woolf. They include Anne Finch, then Margaret, Dorothy Osbourne, Alfra Ben, Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte, George Eliot, etc. So all these names are familiar. Let's have a quick understanding of what is mentioned there. Okay, Anne Finch, the Countess of Winchelsea, was an 18th century nature poet. Okay, so her poetry is seen today as a representative of the late 18th century age of sentiment, which explores nature through the feelings and imagination of a solitary individual. So what is the significance of her poetry? It is that she is the only woman poet to have been retrieved and placed in the phase of pre-romantic poetry, which was wholly male-dominated or phallogocentric in nature. Now the next person, the Duchess of Newcastle, named Margaret. So she and the contemporary Anne Finch, both of them continue to be cited even today, and Margaret is one of those who have mentioned the labor between men and women. Okay, so in that case she is also very significant. She is the one who wrote on the inequitable division of labor between women and men, which even now stands internationally as one of the important aspects with respect to feminist theories. And now we have Dorothy Osbourne. She is an 18th century correspondent of William Temple. William Temple is also a well-known figure in literature. He is also the patron of John Swift. So she is used by Woolf as an instance. In the sense, her mention is used as an instance of how a woman, with the instance of a writer, as the letters show, is also conditioned by the hostility of a patriarchal society. Now we have Afra Ben. She is also very famous. She is the first woman writer to turn professional and to make money by her writing. Okay, as one from the lower class, Afra Ben alters the paradigm of a woman writer. Now comes the most familiar names: Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte, George Eliot. All these are famous novelists. So Woolf extends her argument to ask why women tend to write novels rather than poetic drama or historical biography. So she herself answers the question. Her answer is that as middle-class women in a patriarchy that restricted their freedom of movement, the social mobility and area of influence of women was restricted to that of personal relationships. That is, the middle-class women fear the opinion of others, and hence they can write only in snatches since they have no room of their own. By room, it's also indicated that they have no identity of their own, no space of their own where they can write in their own time and space. Yes. Woolf also points out that a woman writer lives under constant pressure from what the later theorists would call gender and ideology. such pressure and its impacts are also mentioned. So towards the end of this chapter, there is also a mention on the mad woman in the attic. Okay, that is a text with a proper title and a subtitle. Sandra Gilbert and Susan Gerber. It's one question that is very prominently asked in NTA NET examinations. So these two writers in the year 1979 compiled their feminist study in the form of a work titled The Mad Woman in the Attic, the Woman Writer and the 19th Century Literary Imagination. Yes. So, The Mad Woman in the Attic, the Woman Writer and the 19th Century Literary Imagination. Here, The Mad Woman in the Attic is the title of the work, whereas The Woman Writer and the 19th Century Literary Imagination becomes the subtitle. Another mistake that all these students make is that they don't know where to capitalize and where not to capitalize. That is, it is important to capitalize the first word of the content words while we write the title. The content words include nouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives, etc. All other, say, articles, prepositions, conjunctions, etc., they need not to be capitalized unless they come first. For example, this the or the is capitalized because that comes before this mad woman. Okay, such things are very minor things that you might make mistakes on, so it's important to have an idea. So to sum up this unit, Virginia Woolf, as we know, is one of the seminal feminists of her era, and she argues that women writers should be enabled by a guarantee of economic independence and privacy, that is, a room of their own. So somebody asked me to repeat that capitalized thing. If you look at the last paragraph of this unit, there is a mention that Sandra and Susan has written this text, The Mad Woman in the Attic, the Woman Writer and the 19th Century Literary Imagination. So I was letting you know that whenever you mention a text, okay, you need to write the proper title firstly. Secondly, you need to capitalize those letters that has to be capitalized. Mainly the content words. Okay, that has to be capitalized. Often if it is printed, we italicize the works. But if it is written, you can either underline it or you can put it in quotes. Okay, these are the conventions in which we write. So, now we'll move on to Unit 4.